Some Romanians like living in the countryside and some just love the city. But I think I meet more Romanians who tend to love the countryside more. So today we're going to make a video about Romanian countryside versus the cities. So let's dive into this video. So I am going to divide this video in such a way that first we're going to start by saying the pros and cons of each part of both the countryside and the city, and then we're going to come to a conclusion. So, for the countryside, we have a couple of pros, such as you have a quiet environment, you have a lot of space, you have land, you don't have a lot of cars going there, so it's really fun in the summer maybe to ride some bikes. It's also really closer to tradition and history, as you find generations who've lived there, and older people is closer to community because you're closer to each person. Like villages are smaller obviously, so there's that sense of community there. And most of all, you have nature. So those are the pros. Now let's go to the cons. Now the main disadvantage, or rather consequence, of staying in a Romanian countryside is that most countrysides, let's say, are far from supermarkets, markets, institutions, high schools, universities. So if you do not have a car, or if you do not have a regular, maybe bus or means of transportation, living in the countryside will be really, really hard for anyone in general. Most of the time, you will find shops over there, but they're like expensive. Like the stuff there are expensive. And for an advantage, I think I forgot to mention that in the countryside, building houses and just buying houses is way cheaper compared to the cities. The main con in this is that if you decide to resell that house, the value decreases. So as years go by, modernization takes over and the houses in the countryside decrease their values. So back to more consequences of living in the countryside. It might be lonely because like you mostly have houses there, not everybody maybe comes out, and because there aren't a lot of people who stay there, you might not always find maybe a lot of people to really go out with, or maybe people your age or who you could find common interest with. Now another one, don't get me wrong, but I would say old people. By old people, I'm not just talking about old people. So I'm gonna use a personal experience to say this one. There was this time I was riding my bike with a friend across the countryside. And before you come after me, I have seen both the countryside and the city life in Romania. My little childhood experience and first childhood experiences in Romania were at the countryside. Great. So as I was riding my bike with my friend, we rode across some oldies and they were staring at me weirdly. At first I thought that they were staring because of my looks, okay? But one thing about the village is that most people know each other, sort of. That's why I say community. Well, my friend told me that I did not greet them and say who I am from, or rather whom I'm from. I mean, in the city, when you greet people, you just get ignored. So you're like, what's even the point of trying? So at the countryside, I think that was a major difference, because why do I have to sort of introduce myself when passing by old people? You get it? Yeah. I mean, that's something some people can really adapt with, is sort of culture and tradition. Like I said, you're closer to culture and tradition. So this one is also obvious transportation problems. Um not all villages really have steady transportation, and some of them maybe the only means to go to the city will be by train or just buses which aren't very regular if they have buses. So let's talk about the city now. Starting with the pros. First of all, you have easier transportation depending on where in the city you live in, because I have seen some parts of my city at least where you still need three buses to go to the other part of the city. And these buses aren't very regular. Although in the city you're closer to supermarkets, you're closer to schools, high schools, the universities, you're closer to institutions, you're closer to better middle schools, because in the countryside you don't have, like, not all schools have a lot of facilities and more, let's say, developed. But in the city you have more schools with more facilities and, yeah, maybe better teachers or something like that. So obviously you will have modernization. I mean, it's very rare to find outdoor toilets in the cities unless it's a really old house. Now in the city, let's say it's just great for investments. Like if you have a property, a house, mostly house and land, property has value. Over the years, that property will have way more value. In the city, even if you have an older house and you still have that same house in the countryside, the one in the city will be more expensive because it's closer to shops around, it's closer to everything. Like, it's the city, it's closer to means of transportation and so on. So the value keeps increasing, at least for now. Another one would be apartments and less maintenance. I mean, if you're in an apartment, obviously you have less maintenance. And how often do you find apartments in the countryside? I mean, in the countryside, you could find stuff for rent, but if you're looking for a block, like blocks and apartments, you mostly find them in the city, and they do not take much maintenance. Not to mention that a lot of houses in countrysides have more land, so you need more maintenance, whereas in the city you don't find a lot of houses with high maintenance. Like, you don't find a lot of houses with a lot of land. Like for 500 mp, it's like a lot for the city. Now, the cons of staying in the city. First of all, would be pollution. And I think this is the main excuse lots of Romanians like to use, that in the city there's a lot of industrialization, and the over time you tend to have allergies and health problems from all the pollution. Another one would be expensive housing. I mean, in the countryside, you could have less than even 100,000 euros and get a normal house, like a house enough for a family. Whereas in the city, it's hard to find something even less than 150 that's good enough for, family and just comfort, So let's say that before you actually buy a property, a house, an apartment, even, because now apartments are increasing in value even more than some houses, it's gonna be a while, years, tons of years. Okay, so in my generation, I doubt that a lot of people are going to be homeowners in the city before they're 35. I mean, if you take a mortgage, that's a different thing, but just like in general. Another consequence would be that you have smaller land area and space. Like, I can't peacefully ride my bike without the thoughts of, okay, people walking around, because there's more population, obviously, and just the land area. You have cars moving around. You can't just, do it peacefully. And if you stay in a noisy environment due to population, yeah, a lot of people don't like noisy environments, so that is also a consequence. So far, these are all the consequences and the pros of staying in the countryside versus the city. And now let's see the results. Personally, I would say that I prefer the city because everything is closer, and I think that life is just easier in the city. There are some hospitals in the countryside where you don't even find doctors. Like the healthcare is worse there, and being far from the city, you do not have like direct access. I prefer the simpler life in the city. So, yeah, that's my take on this. And if you have any opinions, please consider dropping a comment on that. And if I left anything out, and see you in my next video.